Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. And this is Here and Now at a Time. The news. Good morning, America. How much fucking?
I almost guarantee there's at least one local news station where that is her tagline, and we're Channel 10, and we are here and now.
Here and now, present.
They say it all badass like that, too. Well, what they think is badass. But
and we have the newest news right now.
It's like the Kent Brockman action news from Simpson.
That's just where my head goes, though, when it's like, oh, shit, we hit record, and I'm not actually, like, mentally ready to do it. It's like, yeah, all right, I need energy. Tonight, what happened? You know, a fucking badger got a pizza, and now they're still trying to hunt it down.
It would be fun to try to do, like, a nightly 1-hour news broadcast about my small-ass, like, town, like, because that
local
is what
news
the news
just doesn't have
is.
that, like, intensity, and that's why none of those fuckers are ever going to be more than, like, a shitty mayor after they're done being an anchor. It's because they don't bring that heat that gets you on 60 Minutes. So it's like, yeah, I got to tell the stupid story about, like, how a bear climbed in through a window and played the piano and then left and nothing happened. But, like, you know, you say it right. It's like a bear has broken in to a residential home. Yeah, like... So, welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. We are not the news. We actually tell very old stories, usually.
Yeah, usually, yeah. I've got one from the future today. It was really hard to research, but
yeah, well,
I found this special website. It's weird.
But the problem is, once you tell it, then the story happened now. It's happening now.
So there were these two idiots that used to talk on microphones all the time.
Yeah.
Are going to be talking on microphones all the time.
A story from the present.
And a countless number of other people that must not be too bright either, because they're listening to this show.
Always a good, yeah. Secret to our success: insult the audience in under 3 minutes.
Right.
What kind of idiot would listen to our dumb crap? You're the bigger idiot. Okay.
Yeah, we've just been trolling you guys for 202 episodes.
Nope. I am not going with you on this. I love you all. You are all imaginary in my head. I don't think we actually have listeners. I think I've been getting duped this entire time, but I love my imaginary friends.
We've got a couple I know of, and there's at least one that's like the person from Misery that's going to kidnap one of us too.
Well, I saw, I love that movie. I just rewatched it a week ago. So I guess I'm ready.
I was going to say, your area of the country seems way more like to kind of fit into that. Like if they took you out into the, I know you're on
I don't remember where that movie was.
It's Maine, I think.
Oh, of course it is. Like, it's Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen King, right.
Damn it.
But
set it somewhere else, you fucker.
Has he ever left the state of Maine, though? Like, has he gone anywhere else?
To the Dark Tower. Like, I don't know. Probably not. But that's the thing. It's like anything that's set outside of there, it's like another universe that's connected to Maine.
Right. But it works. I mean, Maine, I'm never visiting it. It sounds spooky as shit.
I was going to say, I'm never going there. But
I actually went there once, and it was fantastic.
Scary.
But we were in the touristy, like, coastal part of Maine. But anyway.
And if you look to your right, there's a clown that's turning into an interdimensional spider.
And there's the prison where awful, awful things happen. Yeah. Some supernatural, some not, but all of them
also
bad.
Some things very beautiful. Yeah, well... Okay, what's our show about today? What do you got?
Stuff.
All right.
Yeah, this is a historical one. So George Edward Waddell was born on October 13th, 1876, which was coincidentally Friday the 13th.
My birthday.
Yeah. It I think he is you. When we get to the end of this, you'll know that that's why it's Although were you born on a Friday the 13th?
I was. September 13th, 1991. The Dark Friday.
So this is October. So I guess when you reincarnate, you move up a year.
So I'm older, technically.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, I hope you weren't born in 1876, because...
Why? What do you got against us 1800 folk? Yeah, we had some bad ideas, but
if you're
we worked them out, okay?
If you're 150 years old and you're still doing, like, this podcast every week, then...
You should be thanking me for paving the way.
Yeah, that's true. I want some first-hand accounts, damn it.
Okay,
the 1800s were a fantastic time for horrible stuff.
Abraham Lincoln invented the stranger, where you sit on your hand and masturbate. That's a first-hand account.
Sometimes a second-hand account, too.
No hand.
Anyway, from a young age, George's distinctive personality was easy to see. He loved having fun, but what kid doesn't? And he didn't really give a damn about anything that didn't serve that purpose. As a toddler, his fascination for firefighting and fire trucks grew into an obsession. After he toddled off down the street and made his way to the fire department, where he apparently stayed for 3 days before returning home.
Okay. Well, they have
yeah, what can I
there.
say? It's a different time, apparently. Like, I could see the toddler, and when you say toddler, it doesn't give an exact age, but it can't be any older than like 3 or 4. I don't consider 4-year-olds toddlers anymore. They're little bastards by that point.
No, you can work. You can fight fires yourself, you little shit.
But I could see a young kid being like, ooh, I want to go to the fire station, and going down there. Why the fuck did the firefighters keep him for 3 days? You'd be like...
It's pretty handy. Like, hey, go get me a beer.
True. He also made a hobby of throwing stones at birds, which is the kind of thing that happens when kids grow up without video games.
Or a fire.
Or with video games. Yeah. So as interested in firefighting and throwing things at other things as he was, George did not particularly care for school and homework.
That's fine. Like, the fates are already lining up for this kid.
Mm-hmm.
Why even waste time with, like, an education? Like, I wouldn't even fight that battle.
He didn't. Though he wasn't dumb. Like, some of the, like, stories you'll read will be like, oh, he couldn't even read. He was illiterate. He wasn't. You know, he wasn't, like, a stupid kid. He just didn't fucking care about school.
All right.
And I completely understand.
Yeah, this is more me every day.
Mm-hmm. Because of his carefree, knowledge-free attitude, the young George Waddell soon earned the nickname Rube Waddell. If you're not familiar, Rube was a old-timey term for, like, just some kind of, like, naive, you know, like, just kind of a dunce, a dummy, idiot, I guess. But it was a name that he'd fittingly embraced for the rest of his relatively short life. So, like, it was given to him initially as, like, a insult. Be like, you're such a rube. You're Rube Waddell. And he's like, yeah, that's who I'm fucking am. That's fine. I don't care. Can I throw shit at stuff?
Yeah, can I hit this bird with this rock? Could a rube do this? That's exactly what a rube
That's what right. He's like, well, then I guess I'm Rube.
All
that's
right.
fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm not changing who I am, fuckers. So though a career in, like, medicine...
heartwarming story of perseverance in the face of adversity. Hey, don't throw that rock at that bird. Fuck you.
I think you're gonna like where this. I think you're really gonna like where this story goes. So a career in, like, medicine or law, like, grew less and less likely by the day. But by now, Rube was really only interested in playing baseball. Fortunately for him, his large size and his years of experience throwing things helped him become a remarkable pitcher. Okay. His antics and quirks both on and off the field would also be quite remarkable. So I'm not going to, like, get too bogged down listing all the minor and major league teams that he played for
White Sox, Red Sox, Blue Sox, Yellow Sox. That's pretty much all the
a lot of them
teams.
were shit that, like, this was the 1800s, turn of the century, early 1900s. So a lot of these were teams like at one point they mentioned the Cleveland City team. Like, it wasn't even, they didn't have a name at
the
that
Oklahoma Sportsmen.
point. Yeah.
Which is funny because my favorite team is the Athletics.
Well, that's the thing. I guess the team names today aren't better. It's just that they've been set for so long at this point that they seem normal.
Athletics,
back then, everything was...
Athletics is a great name because it doesn't even grammatically make sense.
Right. Who are they? They're athletics.
Yeah.
Like, you mean they're athletic? No, they're not athletic. No. It's not an adjective. That's a noun.
It's a category of thing.
Actually, I'm not going to get too bogged down in the specific teams and like the timelines and stuff. For reasons that make him an excellent subject for the show, he was moved around a lot. I also didn't really make an effort to put this like completely in chronological order because it's nearly impossible to do so without like dedicating a whole bunch of time and effort that I'm not willing to do for the notes. And it doesn't matter. Basically, there's going to be a lot of anecdotes about this guy, and so when they happen during his career is not... Some of it's not real important. Some of it is. Whatever.
Did he shit his pants?
Yes, often.
Okay.
He was actually known as Rube Poopy Pants Waddell. That's why he waddled all the time. You know.
So that's what I'm getting at is like, was he the master to George Brett and his great I shit my pants last night story?
Yeah. George was looking up to this guy. Because you don't want to look down.
I had a great dinner at Kokomo's and then Rube
specifically look up.
Fucking exploded.
So Rube's fascination with firefighting never faded either. So he continued to like throwing and he continued to like fighting fires or firefighting. So apparently whenever he was pitching and a fire truck drove by, he would simply sprint off the field and follow the fire truck.
That's a goddamn hero.
He thought
we
yes.
should all have that reaction to a fire in our neighborhood. Like, fuck this, drop what we're doing.
We all have literally
needs help.
We have like complete opposite reaction. You either do what I tend to do and pretend like you didn't see it, even though it's impossible not to. Be like, what? Did a massive fire just break out? Where?
A neighbor like a few weeks ago, like I think when we were on our break, like I talked about the concert I went to, and when I got home, a neighbor's roof was on fire, and like all I did was stare out at it. And,
yeah, you don't do the knock on the door, make sure everybody's out. You're just like, huh.
I mean, the firefighters were there, and they were like working on it and shit, and they were like drilling the hole through the roof and shit.
Yeah. You didn't go up and ask them if they needed help?
Yeah, I didn't run out at all. I was like, I hope that doesn't like spread. Yeah. You know, it was like, obviously I hope everyone's okay, but also it would really suck if it came over here.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating to watch too.
But not doing anything to prevent it from coming over. Just being like, that could be bad.
I often have that reaction too. Where you're like, I hope that doesn't happen. It's like, you could do this. It's like, no. I'm just going to hope it doesn't happen.
No. I'm quite tired.
Just got back from a concert. I mean,
it's 2 a.m.
I'm a little drunk. I'm a little stoned from the.
I'm a bit of sleepyhead.
Yeah, mostly just tired because I'm old.
But I'll keep watching while you grown men do the work.
But Rube did the opposite. Like, he would literally be on the mound pitching in the middle of the count, and then just be like,
ass over.
Right. And as he was doing so, he'd rip off his uniform because underneath he would wear fire-resistant, like, long underwear. Basically, like, he was basically the Superman fucking thing. Like, he would rip off his uniform and have his firefighting stuff underneath.
Spider-Man shit had to come from somewhere.
Yeah. So at some point early on, relatively early on in his like professional career, the manager got really fucking sick of his star pitcher running away and chasing fire trucks.
I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna keep imagining how fucking funny it would be to watch a guy like awkwardly like trying to take off all his clothes while chasing a fire truck.
Fire truck, yeah.
He's like falling over his like shoes and shit.
Well, one of his managers got sick of that, so he forbade him from wearing these firefighting like clothes underneath his uniform, which, anymore they're very, very strict about what you can wear on the field. Apparently back then, not as much. But he's like, hey, no, none of that, mister. So Rube listened, he quit wearing it, but it didn't stop him. Instead, he just stripped down fucking naked.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, he's like a dog. Like, he can't help it.
Right.
He has to chase it.
Right. So, like, one particular anecdote tells of one such time when he stripped butt naked and sprinted off the mound to follow the fire brigade, who were responding to a chimney fire. So basically the exact fire that you just described, although not spread to the whole roof yet. When Rube arrived on the scene, he heroically grabbed an axe and climbed onto the roof, where he, still completely naked, mind you, hacked away at the roof until he had basically cut the roof away. Like your guys were doing in your story. But the firefighters were a little confused as to why he did it, because it wasn't necessary to the process of fighting this particular fire. This one was contained to the chimney, so there was literally no reason to hack the roof away. But Rube's like, guys, I got this.
I was going to say, they mostly, like, do that to have, like, you know.
Well, it's when the fire gets kind of in that attic space, or sometimes between, like, the layers in the roof, you have to do it to get to the fire. Yeah. This one was just in the chimney. It was like that creosote, the soot buildup. Yeah. But Rube did it anyway, and he
we gave him a medal.
He was extremely proud of himself. He considered himself a hero for this response, and all of his responses, really. And he is. I mean, if you're up there on a roof with an axe with your dick flailing around, it's like you're putting yourself directly in the line of danger.
I'll certainly call you a hero to get you away from me. But you kind of fucked up my roof.
Yeah. The firefighters don't care. It's not their roof.
But I got enough fire damage now in my fucking chimney.
Imagine being that homeowner that's like
a fucking roof.
Imagine that homeowner that's going to the fire department like, you guys just cut off my roof. What are you going to do about it? And they'll be like, we didn't cut it off. He's not with us.
What do you mean, like, a fucking naked guy follows you? If I had known that, I would have never called.
Called you, yeah. On more than one occasion, Rube had also simply just walked off the mound in the middle of games because he decided he wanted to go fishing. Like, he'd be pitching and they'd be like, it's kind of nice.
And I say this as a baseball fan. Everyone involved in baseball should have that mentality. It's a slow, doddering game that you should be able to just, like, you know, at least once a week a player should have I'm going to fucking opt out, go fish clause.
It's not been a secret on the show. I'm a Cleveland Guardians now fan. There's been a lot of Cleveland teams over the years where they clearly had that mentality. They weren't allowed to walk off the field because, you know, they'd get fired or penalized. But they were mentally fishing. There's a lot of times where you can tell the players are like, yep, I'm checked out. This guy was just like, fuck it, I'm checked out. I'm going to go fish. Why be here?
I would put a pond in center field.
Well, the Marlins got the stuff back there.
The Marlins are a bunch of bullshit.
Or not the Marlins, the Rays. The
Rays are also a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Those goddamn Florida teams all have shitty stadiums.
Well, nobody goes to them. Why build something nice? I think their average attendance.
So I can go fishing on a Sunday. Yeah.
So on the one hand, Rube was more than a little flaky, but on the other, he was really fucking good, which is why teams kept giving him a chance, and would at least for a while put up with his antics, which was way more than just this stuff, and we'll get to a lot of it. But it did include things like doing cartwheels back to the dugout or walking on his hands back to the dugout after innings, which is awesome to me. You do that now and the other team's emptying their fucking bench and coming after you. But he is just like, yeah, why walk when I can walk on my hands?
That's pretty good. That was when, there was fun in the game.
Right. Well, and if you can imagine, the fans loved him. I mean, he was
nowadays,
favorite.
People get all pissy over a bat flip.
There's an unspoken rule. It's like, well, then it's not a real rule. Just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, this is like your feelings rule, you fucking sensitive nitwit.
Yeah, you say that phrase, and I automatically know that you're at least 65 or 70 years old.
Yeah.
And what you really mean is things are different than they were.
They haven't
like,
fucking won in the postseason in 52 years. You think it's because they flipped the bat?
Right. At the turn of the century, Rube was playing for a Western League team in Columbus, Ohio, and stayed with them when the team was moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan mid-season, because that's the kind of thing that happened back then too. This was before you had this was the Western League, the American League and National League were around, but they were all separate leagues. There wasn't like the major.
There wasn't a World Series,
right.
They
We
all
actually
came
get to
together.
that because the World Series starts during Rube's, tenure as a major league player. But yeah, it was kind of right in that formative. Baseball had been around, on a professional level for a while, but it just hadn't, it was still kind of fledgling. So anyway, started out at Columbus and that year and then moved to Grand Rapids with the team. That season, he was 26-8 by the end of the season. And then he pitched 9 more games for the Louisville team in the National League, going 7-2. So, you can see why teams were like, yeah, he's kind of unreliable. Because there were, I mentioned he'd walk off the field. There were a lot of times where he just fucking wouldn't show up, too. They'd be like, it's Rube's turn to pitch. Where the hell is he? And it's like, nobody knows. That was kind of his deal. If he wasn't there, he could have been anywhere.
Well, have a deep bullpen.
Right. So after the season, the National League contracted to 8 teams, and that's when the Louisville ownership, the team he was on, bought the Pittsburgh team. They disbanded Louisville because they were getting rid of teams, and only Louisville's top players were moved to Pittsburgh, which included likes of Hall of Fame player / manager Fred Clark, who I'd not heard of, a little fella by the name of Honus Wagner, which I have heard of, and, of course, Rube Waddell. So my point being is, when we say Rube was good, he's in, the league with guys like Honus Wagner.
Greats of baseball.
Right. So it's not like this guy was pretty good. He was very, very good. But Rube and his antics would soon piss off Fred Clark, his teammate / manager in Pittsburgh, and so he was eventually suspended. He played for a handful of minor league teams before being recruited by Milwaukee Brewers manager Connie Mack. As it turns out, Connie Mack was about the only manager that could remotely tame Rube. And a lot of that's relatively speaking. Basically, Connie realized this guy's good, but I'm going to have to let him be him. Most managers were trying to tell him, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that was not going to ever.
So he just started intentionally setting fires every now and then to give Rube what he wanted.
Yeah, that kind of thing. He would, if he pitched a game, he'd give him the next 3. He'd buy pay for a 3-day fishing trip for him. That kind of stuff. Just let's lean into this a little bit. Yeah,
it's like raising a puppy.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a very good analogy. Connie may have been able to minimize Rube's tendency to walk off during games or simply not show up at all. But his effectiveness at reining in Rube's off-field behavior was less, effective. When Rube wasn't in the middle of an active baseball season, and I guess even sometimes when he was, he would often simply just disappear. Nobody knew what he was up to during those times, so they knew it was always something. He wasn't one of these guys that's oh, this guy's so crazy. Like a Jim Carrey almost fellow that when he's not in the spotlight, it's because he's chilling at home. He's
he's the type of guy who at any point you could imagine him popping out of the woods covered in blood. Not he murdered someone. He doesn't even know what the blood is.
You're pretty close. For instance, when he was playing for a team in Florida, during his off time, he made a habit of visiting alligator farms where he'd jump the fences and wrestle the fucking gators.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. During one such visit, he did sustain a pretty serious bite to his arm, but it was to his right arm, and he was left-handed, so he didn't fucking care. Didn't stop him from pitching.
Jesus. They're so fucking strong.
I know.
Gator wrestling's always a punchline and shit in stories, but they would fucking fling me around like a fucking Twix bar.
And in fairness, there's a large variance of what size gator you could be talking about, but really any size can do some pretty good damage. And based on what I learned about Rube, I'm guessing he wasn't hopping over the fence to fight literal 3-foot long gators. I think
he
he was going for the picking the big guys.
Yeah, he was going for some Paul Bunyan type pay-per-view shit.
So the actual gator wranglers, because there were actual people that were like paid to wrestle gators, and there still are, and that's a whole fucking thing. Not a great industry if you've watched Tiger King, kind of the same vein as that. But there was actual gator wrestlers at these farms, and they weren't really happy with Rube for doing this. And eventually they got Rube's manager to convince him to knock it the fuck off, and Rube obliged. So instead he began hopping the fences at ostrich farms where he'd attempt to ride ostriches, which was extra great because ostriches are also extremely dangerous, and
Donkey Kong Country was born.
Yeah. But, you know, ostriches, it's easy to look at them and be like, oh, they're big, they're stupid, just birds. Ostriches are fucking vicious. They've got giant talons, and yeah. But the other funny part about that is he's trying to ride them. Rube was like 6'3", 250 pounds or something. Like, he was a big fucking guy.
Yeah.
So it had to be quite a sight. But you could tell that all these stories paint a very good picture of Rube's actual personality, because he's, in a lot of ways, he was like me, but to the extreme, because that's that smart ass, like, okay, I won't wrestle gators.
As soon as like they leave the room, like, who the fuck are they to tell me I can't wrestle a gator?
At one point in his career, he showed up to the game with a pretty massive wound from a lion bite, where he had apparently tried to do something with a lion. It's safe to say that he loved exotic and not particularly safe animals, and he loved doing weird things with exotic and not particularly safe animals. But hey,
at least he wasn't throwing rocks at him.
Right. And per my notes, at least he wasn't trying to have sex with them, which puts him head and shoulders above most of the people. That's true. But given the way people loved his antics and loved to follow what he was doing, I'm pretty confident if that was part of his deal, it would be in there. He probably would have written it into his biography himself. Yeah. Like, his biographer's like, we should gloss over that. He's like, no, we fucking won't.
Fuck the lion.
Right. Rube was unapologetically Rube. I mean, he never made an attempt to like hide his weirdness or his whatever or his personality. He didn't care. Which is why I was so happy to come in. I should say, I should have started with this. I say I'm happy to come across it. This is the one that our friend Andrew, Play Critically from Twitter, had sent me months ago. And it's like, hey, this would probably be a good topic. He was fucking right. I love this topic. Anyway,
I hate it now that I know he's responsible.
He's responsible, yeah.
God damn it. Do your own research, Steve. I have to delete this whole episode now.
Well, you'll be happy to know he like pointed the topic out to me. This is probably the most research and the most note-taking I've had to do in a long time for this show, because he's the kind of guy with all these things that you have to cross-reference your sources and figure out what the fuck's going on. Anyway, probably won't surprise you to learn that Rube also liked to drink, and by that I mean he was an alcoholic.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, right. Again, lots of similarities here. He's my, I don't want to say, he's like who I aspire to be. Maybe not so much, but alcoholism is a terrible disease and doesn't often lead to good things. For Rube, this meant getting into fights, including the time when he drunkenly assaulted the parents of one of his exes, because he'd have many.
I gotta say though, like, if you're getting in a fight with this guy, that feels like it's on you. Like,
yeah, probably
you should be able to be like chummy with this guy no matter who you are.
Well, he had at least 3 wives, but there's no real consistency. And even Rube like would say that joke that he kind of lost track of how many women he married. But one of his downside, it's like every story, we can't have like these flat out heroes. It sounded like he could be quite abusive to his wives. Like, I don't know, like necessarily physically, maybe a little that some mental abuse. Like, he was not a good spouse.
Well, I mean, I could definitely. You don't need a story to believe mentally abusive. Like, but
at the very least, he wasn't reliable in any way, shape, or form.
Like, you know, definitely shit husband material.
Yeah, like when you talk about walking off in the middle of pitching a game, he did the same shit to his spouses. He would just disappear, and they had no idea what specifically he was up to, because he didn't care. He was all about like, hey, this is what I want to do right now, which sounds great, but done wrong, it can be pretty asshole.
Sounds great, but again, like if you have a family,
yeah,
can't do that shit. I can do that shit. I can do it right now.
It'd still be pretty mean because you do have family members that would be worried about you, but at least you don't necessarily have responsibility. You're not leaving kids and a wife behind. Like, now what do we fucking do?
How are they going to pay the bills the same way they've been paying them? Like, that's...
Yeah. In fact, your mom would be like, oh, man, I'm worried about Ben, but I could probably rent his room out and make some extra cash. No, I never got that impression of your mom either, but... yeah, like it's different when you're single and wild, and when he began to marry and be wild, not a great character trait.
I couldn't remember he was married and wild.
Right. So yeah, I guess at one point he beat the shit out of his ex's parents, or at least got into a pretty bad fight with them, and then left the state in order to avoid getting arrested. There's kind of a whole story there too, because when you're one of the most well-known baseball players in the world at the time, it's like, yeah, I left the state. It's like they know where you fucking are at all times. Yeah. You pitch for a baseball team, and his manager had to
be fair, but you could say his next start, but he might not be there for it. So
good point. But apparently during that season, his manager had to make a deal with the cops like, hey, can we not arrest him till after the season? And of course, when you're famous and people love you, they're like, sure.
You got to buy him. Like, oh, God, they get free tickets or some shit.
And he never really did jail time, or if he did, nothing like mentionable. So
just whatever. Like now.
Well, that's true too. Blah, blah, blah. Near the end of his major league career, Rube would even pass out drunk on the mound during a game against New York. Like,
this is baseball. We're passed out in the seats. Nobody's awake.
That's true.
If you remember to get up to bat, take your base.
Yeah. So that was towards the end of the career when his alcoholism was getting, because it doesn't get better when you're famous and unchecked. Like, it gets worse.
It can only go one way, but you know what?
Yeah.
What a way.
But between like that part where he assaulted his ex's parents and passed out drunk, there's still like a good 4 years of stuff to talk about. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. When Connie Mack could rein in some of Rube's behaviors, or while he couldn't deal with like all the baggage that he brought to the team. So he had to like cut Rube on a few different occasions over the years. I believe that the first time that he had to suspend/cut Rube was after he found out that in addition to playing on Mac's major league team, which would have been the Milwaukee Brewers at the time, he found out like concurrently he was pitching for 2 different minor league teams as well. And he had to suspend him because that was against the rule. Like, he had no fucking choice. But I could be
that would really piss me off, though, of like, I couldn't get you to show up for all your starts for my team, and you've been pitching for some minor league or some shit.
Oh, well, it gets better because one of the things that would happen is he wouldn't show up for his games, and they'd find out he was pitching in sandlot games with kids because he just was having fun. Like, so he loved baseball, but to the point where he's like, well, this is a fun game with kids. With you're yelling at me. There's rules. I can't leave whenever I want. Like, but he liked getting paid. So he kept doing it, and they kept paying him. And I think this is kind of implied, he had to cut him a number of times, this Connie Mack did, but it also means he re-signed him a number of times over the years, too. In fact, after Rube was cut by the Chicago Cubs, because they couldn't take any more of his shit, Connie Mack learned that Rube had taken up with a minor league team out in California. Most of Rube's career and life was spent in the Midwest, because that's where I think baseball was the biggest. But he had made his way out to California and was pitching for a team out there, and Connie knew that Rube's talent was wasted in the minors, especially given that he just so happened to need that exact talent in his major league team. So Connie Mack hired 2 Pinkerton detectives to go to California and kidnap Rube and bring him back.
Just
so he brought him back.
Fuck.
Basically, when I say kidnap, that's more for the Rube kind of went willingly, but it was kidnap him to. It was less about like taking Rube against his will, more about stealing him from the minor league team that had him under contract and wouldn't give him up. So I'm sure they were real fucking happy about that. But and it's real interesting if you still have that like old timey perception of the Pinkertons, like, oh yeah, they were like the first police for it. No, they were just like mercenary fuckers.
Yeah, they were the first police fuckers, but not in a remotely good way, in a very, very bad way. Like the shit we are still trying to stop. They were the ones like, why don't we just do that?
They're about the tip of the deep-seated root of that problem in our current system. Like without them, I think we'd be probably at least a step or two better off than we are now. But anyway,
play Red Dead Pinkertons, again. Week 2 of me saying play Red Dead. You'll know all you need to know about fucking Pinkertons.
So yeah, the Pinkertons went out, grabbed him, brought him back. At the time, Connie Mack was bringing him back to play on his team in Philadelphia, which were the Athletics. The Philadelphia Athletics, which is weird. But...
Yeah, that was. I have a Philadelphia Athletics T-shirt, actually. The original elephant on it.
Which has nothing to really do with Philadelphia or athletics. Like, I love it. They're the best team because they're just so fucking weird.
Yeah, it was a really, forced, somebody called the team, was talking to the owner and said something about them being white elephants. And
they're like,
we need a mascot. And the owner just ran with that. He's like, absolutely. But not enough to change the name to elephants.
Thank God, because athletics is better than elephants. But or they'd be like the Dumbos, even though I don't think that was around.
Oakland Stompers.
In 1905, Waddell had helped the Athletics reach the postseason. But before the team would play in the championship, Waddell reportedly got into a fight with a teammate after seeing said teammate wear a straw hat after Labor Day, which was apparently a thing you weren't supposed to fucking do. You've probably heard the dumb, you can't wear white after Labor Day thing. It used to be if you wore a straw hat, if a man wore a straw hat after Labor Day, people would knock it off their head and be and apparently Rube did that, but in a very Rube way, which was probably more like punching the guy in the head until it fell off again, like Red Dead. Teammate didn't particularly like that, and they got into a fight on this train on their way to one of these games. During the fight, Waddell's shoulder would get injured to the point that he was unable to pitch, and this was during the second ever World Series. So we talked in the beginning about how that hadn't. By now, this was the second. The first one was, I think, in 1903, and then they skipped 04, and then so this was 05, I think. That's what my notes say. Hey, how about that? So he couldn't pitch, and the Athletics would end up losing to the New York Giants, which a lot of people attributed to not having their star fucking pitcher.
Different cities, same fucking result. God damn it.
Rube's alcoholism and bitter and often violent disputes with his second ex-wife, which was the same one who he assaulted their parents, sounds like she was also kind of abusive. When you're an alcoholic, you tend to get with other alcoholics and just not be good.
It's a bubble,
right.
We're all in it.
But it began to wear out any remaining goodwill that Rube had with his teammates. Through his career, his boisterous and downright weird antics had made him a fan favorite. Like I said, people loved him for being so fucking weird and good. That's a good combination. If you're weird and bad and you're losing for your team, they're not going to put up with that shit.
Totally. How many times, you and me are both sports fans, it's the common topic about sports, radio and sports teams, where it's fucking Russell Wilson. He's a weird fucking dude. And right now he sucks. So he's the worst thing ever.
Right. But then you get another guy that's he wins every game he starts, but he travels with a stuffed unicorn that he's fucks every night, and then people are like, he's quirky.
Yeah. People like that energy.
Right. So that's where Rube fell, but
he's fucking a goddamn stuffed animal. His teammates are just he's got that dog in him.
on the mound. Like, he's like, hold on, pitcher's timeout. And they're like, there's no such thing as a pitcher's timeout. It's like, well, there fucking is now.
He's got that dog in him, and he's got him in that dog.
Look, I haven't seen a fire truck in like 3 days, and I got all this pent up energy. Give me my plushie. But by now, people were also starting to sour on him because you can only take so much of that. Like, at first, it's novel and kind of fun and funny, and then eventually you're
just baseball seasons are very long, and if you're being fucking weird.
Yeah. And then, like I said, he lost a ton of goodwill with the fans when he started this inane fight with a teammate, and then in a lot of the fans' eyes, you know, for especially athletics fans, cost them the World Series. That like I said, if you're winning, they love you. If you do that, they turn very fucking quick. In the early 1908 season, Connie Mack was forced to trade Waddell to the St. Louis Browns, which was apparently a team. A trade in which Mack was rumored to only get a cigar in return. Although that doesn't seem to be true. The Wikipedia article actually states he was traded for $5,000, which in 1908 would have been roughly...
a single cigar with.
I had to look it up because it's like $5,000. I'm like, that seems pretty good in 1908. It's the equivalent of like $160,000. So, yeah, it doesn't sound like... a lot of this stuff, like any of these guys, like, you know, the stuff gets exaggerated and like flavored. Like, yeah, by now all you could get from him was a cigar. No, he was still really good, and they were still willing to pay money for him. It's just he wore out his welcome in this particular league. But that year, Rube pitched a 16 strikeout game for the Browns, which at the time set a major league record, and it would last for a while. I had to look it up. I couldn't find out exactly when it was
16
broken.
to put it in perspective, the game hasn't changed that much. 16 is a fuck ton.
Yeah,
strikeouts.
But when I was like, I wonder how long it stood. Is it still something that's close? No, the current is like 23. But...
Yeah. Like, the game's grown, but that's still like, if your guy puts up 16, that's a good fucking night for him. Usually.
Yeah, anytime a team gets up to a pitcher gets up to 10, that's when the people start like posting him out on the like outfield wall, you know, and people get super excited. You know, 10's really good, 16's good, especially back then. Rube was released by the Browns in 1910, and he would never pitch in another major league game again.
That's okay, because a lot of kids around the neighborhood.
Right. And he kept playing. He pitched in the minors still. However, during the spring training in 1912, he was playing for a Kansas City team, I think, or maybe a Milwaukee team, a minor league team. But they were down in a town called Hickman, Kentucky, which is kind of what I call every town in Kentucky. But to be fair, I call every town in Ohio that too.
I call it Bentucky.
But while they were while they were down in this town during spring training, they experienced disastrous flooding rain. So just a really bad, you know, storm or probably chain of storms. Ever the hero, Waddell jumped into action and successfully helped save the town from, like, you know, complete devastation.
He drank all the water up.
It sounds like sandbagging and that kind of stuff. However, exposure to the cold water led to a bout of pneumonia, which would return a second time later that year. And then by 1913, Waddell was diagnosed with tuberculosis.
Should have drank the water up.
So another like callback to Red Dead there too, but he'd end up dying in a sanitarium in 1914 at the age of 37. So like I said, not a long life, but he lived way more in those 37 years than most of us would live in like 100 years.
And that's the thing about TB. It fucking took a lot of people away who should have died different.
Right, that's the thing, like... He could have gone out in a literal blaze of glory with his firefighting stuff, or been eaten by like a... I'm trying to think of the weirdest animal you could possibly pick to eat him. But no, he had to die in a fucking sanitarium because we've talked about, you know, medical stuff back then was basically like, you become a burden. We've got one particular building that we send everybody that's a burden to. Have fun.
I was kind of expecting like all the birds would gather together and drop one giant rock on him.
Yeah, fuck you, Waddle. But
right,
you know what? I was just thinking, Waddle would be the biggest fucking fan of Randy Johnson. You've
that
had to see
combines
that
his
video.
passion, yeah. When he fucking knocks out a
everybody would
bird.
be like, Waddle, you're so good. He's like, I'm no fucking Randy Johnson, man.
For people who don't know what we're talking about, Randy Johnson was a pitcher, and there's a famous clip where he threw a fastball. I think it was a fastball. It definitely killed the bird.
Fucking, obliterated the bird.
Yeah, a bird fucking flew in front of it, and the timing couldn't have been more tragically perfect. And you just see a bird blow up like a fucking video game.
And I'm not really a fan of violence against animals. He didn't do it on purpose, so you can't be mad at him for that.
No,
but it's also worth it for...
but...
And it's a completely... It's interesting from... I've never seen a bird disintegrate, and it did.
Yeah, like, there's so much... Like, I'm not... It sucks, but... It's also like I've never seen matter react that way in reality.
And it's also worth it for the faces on Johnson, the batter, the catcher, the umpire, and every fucking buddy else. But those were the closest people to it. Like, just like...
Randy Johnson had to be like, after that game, splashing water in his face, staring at himself in the mirror. Like, am I a fucking superhero? Like... I didn't know I had this power.
Well, that's the thing. I think he lied because it's like, yeah, man, that was crazy. He was aiming for the bird. He saw it coming. He's like, I'm going to pitch this fucking ball right now. That's how good Randy Johnson was when he was on. The fun thing about Randy Johnson was he threw really fucking hard, like 105 mile an hour fastball. I don't know if quite that much, but over 100.
Yeah, he was a burner.
But he was either really on or really, really off. Like, yeah. I've never seen a pitch go like 20 feet above a batter's head until I watched Randy pitch.
He's the type of dude who's like, yeah, he's getting you 15 plus strikeouts, or he's
0.
Yeah, or he's not going to make it through the first inning.
And it's a miracle he never murdered a batter. Like, the bird was the only casualty.
Hey, we don't know that. You might have hit him, and then they like poofed in the dust.
That's true.
There's no evidence.
Like, I thought somebody was up at the plate. I guess not.
Well,
like, he hit him so hard they disappeared from all like record evidences.
You get beaten by Randy Johnson, and you don't even exist anymore.
He never existed. Yeah, you don't just blink out. You blink out to back to inception. There, you're just gone.
I like that. It's fucking, you get hit so hard your mom forgets you.
Right.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
But, so he died at 37. There's a lot of theories about why Rube was the way he was. As much as it's still lacking today, mental health science at the time was basically non-existent. Plus, like I said, when you're very successful at something, especially in the entertainment field, people don't question it too much.
Not really. Yeah.
It doesn't really seem helpful or necessary to try to like posthumously diagnose Rube, although a lot of people have say he had this or that or whatever. I don't fucking care. He was Rube. He's very fun to watch or listen about or read about.
I'm sure he had brain problems, but also...
I don't know, though, because a lot of people, I'd heard theories like ADHD.
Like super... Just you telling the stories. So he's like super eccentric, but he also like leans heavily into alcoholism and stuff.
Right.
Like it's
and it seems like as a kid, the parents never necessarily punished him for doing his own thing either. So like, I think he was relatively normal. He just was like, I think any of us, if we felt we could do whatever we wanted, and I don't even mean that in like a sinister way, but like, if your life was just like, I feel like doing this now, and everybody's like, I guess, we would do that.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's like diagnoses and stuff though that, could contain like such like radical impulsiveness. But, yeah, I mean, I don't care either. Like, it's a good story. Yeah. But I mean, also he apparently fucking was abusive to women. So I can see the benefits of like trying to be like, well, what was going on in his brain?
Yeah, and I should point out, like, I didn't come across like specific, like, oh, he beat his wives, but I didn't dig into that because most stories you find about Rube, they're about these things. It's the weird things he did in his baseball like career and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't really dig into his personal life.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, he's not. Like you're not fighting your like ex's parents because you were the good guy.
Yeah, well, right. And like I said, at the very least, if he wasn't like physically beating his wife, he was very much a flaky, non-supportive, and probably mentally. I mean, even if you're not specifically mentally, like, you know, the whole like abusing him, you know, calling names and stuff, you're very much driving people insane just with your antics alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was that part of it. But the other thing is, it's hard to like diagnose anybody after the fact, but especially someone like him, because anybody that's got this like larger than life like character, you know, a lot of these stories have been exaggerated or misrepresented a little bit. You know, this stuff is documented and it's true.
The lion actually came over the fence at him.
At him, right. And I'm not going to do that, like, that Steve thing I do a lot where I get to the end and be like, just kidding, these are all made up, this didn't happen. No, I mean, he was who he sounds like he was. But also it does get a little hard to get exact truth from exaggerations and stuff. But what's for sure is that everybody who knew Rube described his constant sense of childlike wonder at the world and his like unquenchable thirst for just living life and like just doing what he thought was fun and interesting. So yeah, like he was flawed and he drank too much. Probably at least a little abusive, maybe very abusive. And he liked to play the hero, but he was Rube. Like, not all bad, not all good, which is it's pretty true. One of the cool things to me, he is in the Hall of Fame. That's like I said, when I say he's good, he was good. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher. One of his stats, I think I have it in here, but missed it when I was kind of reading down through my notes. He and I think this was the year that he was traded to the St. Louis Browns, so 1908. They were still a major league team. No, that was a 16 strikeout game. Anyway, he still has to this day the single season record for strikeouts for a left-handed AL pitcher, which sounds, you know, it's baseball statty in that one of my complaints about baseball stats is you always hear stuff like this is the most, you know, doubles ever hit by a right-handed batter on Tuesday night games when they're on Fox. You know, like they get really specific about things. So he doesn't have like the most strikeouts in a season, or even the most for any pitcher in the AL during a season, but the most for a left-handed pitcher. So you're getting a little nitpicky there on the stat, but given that he said it in like early 1900s and it's still the record to this day, and they play more games now than they did back then, I think that's kind of cool too. So hell of a pitcher, weird fucking guy. Very interesting though.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, right.
This will be like the point in the show where we actually bring him out and I have to like get up out of my chair. Like, let him sit.
What up? I don't know why I'm doing like I don't know, that's a sitcom theme. That's not a...
Oh yeah, we stole that. That's the official theme of this show.
It's like the Jeffersons, I think. Something...
Ben and Steve.
Which would be extra great
because song before.
Would it be extra great to steal a song from like a famously like black piece of entertainment as two white dudes that are like doing a podcast? Be like, what? Are you telling me the song was for something else? I don't know what you're talking about.
I thought there was no rights to it.
If we couldn't get any douchier, we could do something.
No,
like
I heard it on YouTube.
In fairness, I just really like that song. But yeah, Rube Waddell.
All right, Rube.
That might be our first. No, it's not our first. I think that might be our first sports-related topic, which is crazy because we both are sports fans. I did do that one Olympic guy once. I can't remember his name, but like that cheated at the marathon, and that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, good for him for cheating.
Oh yeah, he died because he poisoned himself to cheat. Or I don't know, maybe he survived. I can't remember. We just read stuff and then forget it.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing. Like, you know, if If we had to remember this shit, there would be no point of doing the podcast because we'd just remember it. By recording it, we don't have to think about it anymore.
That's literally been my MO my entire life, is to learn a bunch of stuff and then remember just enough about it to not know anything about it. Like, you know it exists, but you're like, oh, dude, you should hear this one story about this guy. And they're like, yeah. And you're like, yeah, he did something. It was cool. I don't remember what it was. You should look him up, though. I was like, cool, what's his name? And you're like, I don't know, Fred, I think.
Oh, fucking. Why can't you do this part?
He lived in like the 1800s or maybe
I
1970.
Gave you pretty much everything you need. Just go find it.
I'm a very much a result of the school system where you learn something long enough to take the test, get a good grade so people think you're smart, and then forget the fuck out of it. Like, just...
Yeah. AKA an American. So, that's the show this week.
Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again, Andrew, for the heads up, because that saved me from having to look up a creepypasta.
Don't give Steve any fucking cheat codes to this shit, all right?
I like that he sent it to me instead of you. When
he was right to. I might have him blocked. I don't know.
Honestly, I thought I did too.
I was like, wait a minute, he's trying to suggest shit for the show? You got some block user in your future, fucko.
Yeah, just...
No, actually,
I appreciate it. Like, if anybody
one.
else wants to do my job for me too, I am not above that.
Yeah, if you're really good at it, I'll replace his ass and bring you on.
No. Let's not get crazy.
Yeah, so that's the show this week. I don't know if we'll do a show next week. We haven't talked about it.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah.
But you'll find out.
It's better when it's a surprise.
Yeah, but have a good Christmas if you celebrate it. If you don't celebrate it, stop someone else from having a good Christmas. Take their Christmas.
Yeah, find somebody that is having one. I like that theory. Yeah.
I can take their shit.
If I don't celebrate, one other person can't do. Like, you don't need to wage a whole war on Christmas. Although if you do, I won't blame you.
No, wage a war on neighbors. Yeah,
but one specific person too. Like, pick a family, but pick out one person to ruin their Christmas. Not like a whole family. Just like, it's like have you ever seen The Jerk with Steve Martin?
No, it's like
it's one of my favorite movies. But... It's completely not PC, but it's very good. It's very funny. But at one point, this like wannabe serial killer, just like picks Steve Martin character's name out of a phone book and decides he's going to assassinate him. Yeah. And he's like trying to snipe him. And he doesn't, clearly, because, it's Steve Martin's the main character. But, something like that. Maybe don't murder somebody, but like pick a random name.
Grinch their ass.
Yeah.
Because
anyway,
fuck those who's. All right. Yeah. See you next time. Farewell.
Like that you were like, yeah. I don't even know. I'm still recording, so this will be the fun end to the show. Yeah, I'm not. So now I'm talking to myself and you stopped your recording, but I'm going to keep talking on the recording.